Hi, I'm Stuart Malina, music director of the Greenwich Symphony Orchestra, and today I'm here to invite you to join us for our concerts on February 17th and 18th at the Performing Arts Center at Greenwich High School. The performance features pianist George Lee and three wonderful works of music. The first is by Gabriel Fauré, the French composer of the turn of the 20th century. This is his suite from Pelléas and Mélisande. Pelléas and Mélisande was a play by Maurice Maeterlinck, and in 1898 this play premiered, and Fauré was asked to write what we call incidental music for the play, meaning music that would be played during the play as either in between scenes music or music that's played underneath dialogue. There are a lot of famous examples of incidental music. Beethoven wrote for Egmont. Grieg famously wrote for Peer Gynt by Ibsen. This piece by Fauré is one of his most known orchestral works, probably the orchestral work that's played more than any other. And it's because the music is so beautiful. The play itself was not an enormous hit, but it did inspire four great composers to write suites of music, or an opera in the case of Debussy, based on Pelléas and Mélisande. And those are, of course, Fauré, who will be playing. Debussy wrote the opera. Schoenberg and Sibelius wrote pieces on Pelléas and Mélisande as well. The story is a sordid one, a very sad one, about Mélisande, who marries the character Golo. Golo discovers her sitting at a lake at the beginning of the play. She marries him and then falls in love with his brother Pelléas. Golo finds out about Pelléas and kills him, and then at the end of the play, Mélisande dies as well. The music is serene. So much of Fauré's music falls into the category of serene. He knew how to write music that was seamless, that kind of melodies that go on, harmonies that are rich, and always with a simplicity to it as well. His music, I don't know, perhaps that's not being fair to the music, but I like to think of Fauré's music as being not overly dramatic. It never hits you over the head, but rather it takes you on a rather beautiful emotional ride in a rather serene place. The piece is in four movements. These are each segments from the play. The first is a prologue in which we get introduced to the general themes of the piece. The serenity of the love between Pelléas and Mélisande, the drama of the jealousy of Golo. We hear his hunting call, which leads us into that first scene. And we also hear kind of the tragic element of the forbidden and, in the end, devastating love between the two of them. The second movement is a spinning song where we have a very simple melody in the woodwinds, accompanied by a spinning motif, a very quick that goes throughout the entire movement. The third movement is probably the most famous in that it's performed often on its own. It's a Sicilienne. A Sicilienne is a dance with a very particular rhythm in 6/8 time, and that rhythm is yum, ba-bum, yum, ba-bum, bum, ba-bum, bum, ba-bum, bum. And so we have this beautiful melody that Fauré creates to the Sicilienne rhythm, first hearing it in the flute with the harp accompaniment. And in fact, often you'll hear this piece performed just by harp and flute in recitals. The final movement is called The Death of Mélisande, and appropriately it is tragic music. It's music with great heaviness, great sorrow, and great expansion. Reaches dramatic peaks, and in the end comes to a very serene finish that brings us to the end of this beautiful suite by Fauré. The second piece on our program is by composer Kurt Weill. Kurt Weill was most known for writing theatrical music, things like Street Scene and Lady in the Dark, and earlier on in his career, The Rise and Fall of the City of Mahagoni, and of course, the Three Penny Opera. Probably his most famous piece because of the popularity of the song Mac the Knife, which opens the Three Penny Opera. This is important to know in appreciating his second symphony. Before he came to America and started writing Broadway shows and musical theater, He was an established classical composer in Germany. During this time, he did write Mahagoni and he did write the Three Penny Opera, but it was all within the world of serious music that he lived. He wanted to write music that had a purpose, that told a story, and his collaborations with Bertolt Brecht, the great playwright, which led to the Three Penny Opera and Mahagoni, were among the great partnerships of the 20th century in musical theater. The Second Symphony kind of goes back and forth. Sometimes Weill is living purely in the world of pure music, very much out of the world of the classicists in terms of the way the piece is formal, the way the orchestra is a classical orchestra for the most part, with just the addition of 2 trombones, along with the woodwinds and the horns and the trumpets with the strings. But then every so often he'll throw in these beautiful melodies that seem like they could have come out of the Three Penny Opera. His harmonic language is always interesting, constantly shifting, so that you never feel solidly on the ground harmonically. But this also creates a sense of excitement to the music and of surprise constantly as to where you've ended up and where you were. It's a piece that goes from extremely dramatic to extremely lyrical. It's in 3 movements, which I suppose in and of itself is a little bit atypical. The first movement starts off with an introduction in which we hear a trumpet melody, which sets all of the motivic material for the rest of the piece. This will then open into a allegro, which begins extremely agitated, and then eventually will introduce its own musical theater-ish melodies as motivic material. The second movement is a funeral march, although he did not designate it as such. It's hard to avoid thinking of this piece as a funeral march, as it has that kind of solemn progression from beginning to end. This is the movement that has most of Kurt Weill's song-like material in it. You have one beautiful melody after another that the orchestra plays on top of this plodding, rather somber accompaniment. The final movement is in 2 parts, well, actually 3 parts. The first part is extremely exciting, extremely delightful. It contrasts with a second theme that has tremendous energy and power. And then the second section of the last movement is almost a silly march. Some say that it's a satirical march making fun of the rise of militarism in Germany at the time. Weill himself would have to escape from Germany and head to the United States to avoid the fate of the Jews in Germany. But I don't know about that. I certainly think it's a march. I certainly think it's satirical and ironic, but it also has kind of a delightful jolliness to it as well. Then the third part of the last movement begins like it started, with the same kind of sparkly material. But then we'll get faster and faster and faster as it builds towards an extremely joyful and driven and jolly finish. I think it's a wonderful symphony, and I think it fits very beautifully after the other kind of drama of the Fauré. The second half of our program is devoted to Rachmaninoff's 3rd piano concerto. It will be played in this performance by pianist George Lee, who is a dazzling virtuoso. And that's actually very important because this is a piece that can only be played by a dazzling virtuoso. It's one of the most demanding piano concertos in the entire repertoire, a daunting task for even the greatest pianists in the world. And it has all of the elements that make Rachmaninoff's piano concertos beloved, ranging from the incredible virtuosity that it shows off, the way that he's able to use the orchestra as a partner for the piano, the way he's able to weave extremely complicated music that is always clear in terms of what's happening, the way he's able to create beautiful melodies and reach stirring climaxes. I don't think anyone does climaxes as well as Rachmaninoff, and we have several of some of the best ones in this beautiful concerto. I think it should be a wonderful performance. I hope you will join us there. Again, it's Saturday, February 17th at 7:30 in the evening, and Sunday, February 18th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the Performing Arts Center at Greenwich High School. If you haven't seen this hall, it is one of the real gems of Fairfield County, a true wonderful orchestral hall. And we're very excited to perform this program in that hall for you. I hope you'll join us in the audience. See you soon.